Razorback Nation, welcome into the first episode of 2025 for us. Hope all you guys had a happy new year, had fun celebrating whatever you end up choosing to do. But we're here 2025, first episode of the year. And before we get started, this episode 32 of Hogs on the Hill is brought to you by Home Field. Step in the legacy of collegiate style with Home Field's premium vintage apparel. Embrace the spirit of your alma mater or your favorite team with our meticulously crafted, comfortable, and stylish collections. Elevate your game day attire and celebrate the rich history of college sports. Home Field, where tradition meets modern comfort in every stitch. Variety sports in all caps is that promo code for 15% off that first order. They got a lot of fantastic Razorback gear for you to go check out. To wear to any upcoming basketball games. Baseball season's right around the corner, so they have some pitching ribby shirts that you can get to be ready for baseball season as that gets ever closer. But we're here on the cusp of conference play for basketball that will be on Saturday, and we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll just update you guys on some, news with football season kind of officially transitioning to the off season. Things and news are going to be less frequent as kind of the portal's closed, and you're going to have fewer updates with, the portal opening for bowl game teams after their bowl game for 5 days. But then after that, kind of done with their the biggest one for Arkansas that they saw enter the portal in that 5-day window was wide receiver Jasmine James. We talked about him on our last recap about how, maybe he could potentially see his way into a role next year on this team. And then lo and behold, a few days later, the last day, I believe, of that portal being open for Arkansas after their bowl game, he decided to, see what his opportunities were. He had that breakout game. And, in a sense of trying to better yourself, I don't blame him one bit. I mean, I get it. You kind of, you are trending essentially, you're on Sports Center top 10 with that play. You had the longest play in school history. I mean, you come out and have a big game. It's just one game. So that's what you got to consider. But, he's into the portal and is going to be looking for a new home. So, what's your thoughts around that after, having a great bowl game?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the sport that we grew up loving, right? This is something completely different. It's a business now, so it sucks because we're so used to being emotionally attached to these players and stuff. But you kind of have to break off from that and realize, these guys might not be there their entire career. And with him, it's really short lived because most people that don't follow Arkansas religiously probably had no idea who he was. And then he comes out there and has one of the best games for a wide receiver all season. That's including with all the games that Andrew Armstrong played. So it just kind of hurts whenever you think, wow, he's so great. We might actually have a good core, especially with him there and then who we're bringing in. And then he just leaves the next day. But can I say I'm surprised? No. And here's the thing. If players leave the right way, quote unquote, how Coach Sam Pittman said, whatever that entails, I don't know. But if he left the right way, went into the portal and is looking to see what his value is, and maybe he's going to hop back in, who knows? There's so much fluctuating right now. But I am kind of worried with some of the places that he's going. Purdue is the one that I'm worried about because you have Barry Odom there now, and he came in the last year that Barry Odom was the DC at Arkansas. So, there's a lot of players. There's Malachi Singleton there. Nico Davier went there too, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I want to say he committed to UCLA.
Hang on.
But you have Carson Dean, I believe, that transferred there.
Yeah.
Alex Sanford, a few guys on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, he's got people there that he knows, and it's a little bit more comfortable. So that worries me a little bit. Now maybe Arkansas can counter, because he showed good stuff. That one play though, the one that was on Sports Center Top 10, that was some. That was a weird route. I'll be honest. That was running in place for like a Scooby Doo, running in place for about 2 seconds, and then he just took off. Now I don't think that's going to translate to the SEC, but if he can clean that up and get some better route running, he could be great with his speed. He's got top level speed, so maybe they'll make an offer to bring him here and bring him back, and I don't know. It's just one of them things now. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's tough to look at because you can't definitely say 100% that he's going to, potentially have a role next year and play significant snaps. But you also don't know because, you've got a lot of people coming in. He might have a leg up because he would have some experience in the Bob Petrino offense. But as we talked about, on the last show on Sunday, how, it's going to be an open competition, essentially. You got guys who, probably start like your Omega Blakes, your Raylan Sharps, those guys that transferred in there. Experienced guys will more than likely start, but you can't say that for sure. And that's the thing where, there's some opportunity here. And as Austin alluded to a while ago, there are visits that he is, taking that was posted just, earlier today by Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports. So starting tomorrow, he is visiting Purdue, like Austin said, Coach Odom, taking over there now. After that, he will be at Oklahoma State on January 4th. On January 5th, he's headed to Utah. January 6th, he's headed to Mississippi State, and then wraps up his visits on January 8th as he is visiting Cal. So, you've got another SEC team there, Mississippi State, Purdue in the Big Ten, Oklahoma State, Big 12, Cal in the, I guess, technically ACC now. So, like, you've got a mix of different conferences there. But like Austin said, I think the one I'd be worried about if that he was going to not come back to Arkansas would be, of course, Purdue, with having that probably previous relationship with Barry Odom. And so who knows? We'll see. Like Austin said, and Pittman had mentioned, if he left the right way, then there's that opportunity to come back if he wants to. So we'll see what happens with that. Other than that, we have a few visits scheduled for guys, coming to visit. We're hosting an ACC receiver, Ismail Cisse, 6 foot 200 pounds from Stanford. He is a redshirt sophomore this past year. He will begin his visit starting tomorrow. He started 5 games for Stanford this past season. Had 26 catches, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns in 2024. And then he played in 2 games his previous season. He is a former 3-star recruit out of Denver, Colorado. He has scholarship offers from Colorado, Cal, USC, UNLV, Colorado State, and others before signing with Stanford. So, another guy that has some experience that could potentially come in and, now kind of fill out some depth in this wide receiver room, because now that's what you're trying to do. If Desmond James does leave, you've lost all these other guys, Armstrong, Broden, Tesla, Satania. Alongside your starters, you got to build up some depth for this wide receiver room. And I think that's what you're seeing Arkansas do right now.
Yeah, I feel like he'd be definitely just a depth piece. I don't, with what he's done, I don't see him cracking that, at least initially, but solid depth, I guess, maybe. He hasn't produced a whole lot, so I'm not like incredibly excited, but I also haven't watched anything on him except for when he played in the game against Clemson, but I don't even remember him from the game. He had 1 catch for 25 yards in that game, so that's not bad. Plus, they weren't a great passing offense anyway. Their offense basically was quarterback run. That was it. So who knows? He might have the stuff, the techniques and talents there. Just he didn't have production because they didn't have a good offense. But we'll see. I still, if we're gonna choose between him or Desmond James, I'm gonna want Desmond James because he at least showed it on the field, But I haven't looked at it. It's pretty new. I mean, I just found out about it today, so I haven't looked at him.
Yeah, that came out just not long before we jumped on here. But
yeah.
So Arkansas is going to have a host of visitors this weekend. Another one to talk about is a Auburn transfer. Defensive back Caleb Wooden is visiting this weekend. He's 6'2", 195 pound DB that has played 3 seasons with Auburn. After signing as a member of their 2022 recruiting class, he announced his intention to enter the portal December 6th following Auburn's 5-7 regular season. He appeared in 28 games over 3 seasons for Auburn, had 41 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. And he was a rotation guy in 22 and 23 before he started the first 6 games this past 2024 season for Auburn. So, a guy that would bring SEC experience, a guy that can come in and, again, be another one of those depth pieces or potentially compete for a starting role. Because, again, in that, it's very similar to the wide receiver. You're losing a lot of guys due to eligibility or guys that have chose to leave. So you've seen what we've brought in so far, and then, you're hosting him. So, you're looking to fill out some, potentially 2 deep spots, if you will, on this rotation and this roster for that secondary as well.
Yeah, and it's in a position that Arkansas really needs to get good at. As much as I wanted him back, Selman Bridges didn't really. I don't think he did bad in the game against Texas Tech, but he had that last touchdown that Texas Tech got. That was not good. He got burned pretty bad. So having someone with SEC experience come in at that position, that's going to be nice. And he could definitely, especially with like Keon Stewart leaving, and Jalen Braxton leaving, he could definitely hop and probably get a starting spot. I'm really surprised Jaheim Singletary stayed too, to be honest with you, just because things haven't been working out right. But I'm surprised that's not something you see every day in this day and age of football, So, but he'll come in. I think he could definitely play for one of those starting spots, especially if it's Jaheim Singletary and Selman Bridges at the starting spots next year.
Yeah, I can see that too. Maybe he can develop over the offseason, hit the weight room, get a little bit bigger, faster, stronger, if you will, and maybe be able to contribute. And I think he kind of made that decision, seeing he knows if he comes back and works, for it, there's a starting spot open. I mean, there's hardly going to be any spots that aren't going to be open, at least for a position battle, other than you got to think Taylor, QB1. Running back is it's going to be a rotation again. Rodney Hill, Tyrell Reed, Malik Washington, and then Braylon Russell, of course.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of competition this next year, and hopefully it follows more towards the case of iron sharpens iron, and we help make each person better on this team. And who knows, you might see some guys exit after spring ball in that spring window, because usually you're going to have some guys that if they know they're not going to start or even get any potential playing time there, then they'll look for a home somewhere else. And speaking of the secondary and the defensive backs, Arkansas defensive backs coach Darren Wilson is leaving, and he will be named the defensive coordinator at Georgia State. So Arkansas loses its first assistant of the offseason. I understand things change, which it's interesting to think about because, during his bowl game press conference, they asked Pittman about potential staff changes. And he said he hasn't heard anything in regards to anybody leaving. Again, things change. Other schools may not. Georgia State may not have had that opening when he was referencing that. And then Darren Wilson is seeing his opportunity to potentially, make that next jump, even though it is at a lower level school there. He has
it's a lower level school, but it's a step up, and he's going from cornerback.
You're going from an assistant
DC.
to
yeah.
So it's weird to say it's a lower level, but a higher position. I'm sure he's probably getting paid similar. Going from Arkansas to Georgia State from a assistant coach to the defensive coordinator, just with probably funding and everything, is probably going to be a very similar tier there. It's just getting that experience as being, the guy, like you said, the defensive coordinator, you run that defense. And so Arkansas is going to have to fill that role. I saw reports potentially that role being filled in 48 to 72 hours. So, I'm sure maybe Pittman was informed, already started making calls before this news came out and everything became, official where the school announces it and stuff like that. So, it'd be interesting to see who Arkansas potentially brings in to replace Darren Wilson and, take over that DB room under Travis Williams.
Yeah. And I guarantee you Travis Williams has I bet he has guys that are wanting to come in and coach with him because, he's probably one of the most talented defensive coordinators in the country, in my opinion, but I'm also biased. So, he is, for what Arkansas was before he got here to what he's created. It's awesome. I know the defense wasn't super great last year. The secondary is kind of, but before he got here, it was, filled with holes. There was nothing Arkansas could do to stop the pass. And
I was about to say, you have to go back a ways before, you see the last time Arkansas had a good secondary.
Yeah. And it was like overnight, they flipped one of the worst secondaries in the country to being, a top 50, top, 60 secondary. And that's, it's still mid, but it's much better than being low. And and with the same guys too, they didn't bring in a whole lot of people between 3 years ago and then 2 years ago.
Exactly. So, he is able to turn around, this DB room with, the talent that was there. So, that makes you wonder, was like with those players that were there, was it just bad coaching? It's hard to say, but the fact that he is able to help turn around this defensive back room is going to be, unfortunately a loss. It'll be interesting to see if any players potentially follow him. I don't know if they get any opportunity with a coach leaving, since it's not like a coordinator or head coach. I don't think there's any window that opens for guys to potentially leave. So that's one thing to consider, but it'll be interesting to see who we do bring in to potentially
I'm thinking about it. I wonder if Pittman did know about that change. He just didn't let it slip because he wanted to wait until after
the bowl game.
After the 5-day period.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So he said, "Hey, yeah, you can go. Just do that. Can you just wait until after that period so no one else jumps into the portal?" That's pretty smart if you ask me. But
yeah, if you think about it like that, yeah, I can see where he'd be like, "All right, let's wait." Because if I'm Pittman, I'm sitting there being like, "Well, my team's already been decimated by this transfer portal already, and I'm going to lose a position coach. If I can ask him to, hey, wait till after the bowl game, that 5-day period, and then, you can go ahead and go, then, that, like you said, that is smart of Pittman to potentially do that.
No.
Other transfer portal news, just here recently, Arkansas will be hosting Tulane's transfer kicker from Tulane. Ethan Head, he was a kickoff specialist this year for Tulane. He will be visiting Arkansas tomorrow. As a freshman, he had 50 touchbacks on 77 attempts in 2024 and then made 4 of 5 field goal tries as well. So Arkansas bringing in some competition in the kicker spot. As you know, that was a struggle or Achilles heel, if you would for this year's team. I mean, it got much better towards, about the Tennessee game going forward, if you will. But I mean,
basically since Matt Shipley, since Matt Shipley started, and that's kind of disappointing because we all saw the struggles that Ramsey was having, and then to not even ever try to make that change, kind of.
Yeah. The only thought I was thinking is maybe like Pittman had mentioned, you're seeing maybe Shipley didn't look as good in practice, but, was better under the game time pressure, if you will. Yeah. But you are losing both of those guys to eligibility, which leaves on your roster. You have Charlie Vondermeeden, who was a true freshman this year. That came in highly rated as well. You're bringing in the top kicker in this year's class. And then Vito Calvaruso, he is a redshirt senior. So I think he's probably out of eligibility as well. So, it makes sense if you think about it, bringing in, your freshman, you have a guy on the roster that's been here, and now you're bringing in a guy that's had some experience. Again, there's going to be another kicker opening competition. Makes you miss the days that we could have a guy counted on like Cam Little that, just from right off the bat when he got his chance was money. Didn't have to worry about it. So maybe one of these guys
still like that in the league too.
Yeah. He goes in the league and wins the starting job for the Jacksonville Jaguars as a rookie and beats out a vet, if you will. So, I mean, it shows you how good he was. And, it's one of those, you probably won't see, the chances of seeing an Arkansas kicker with that talent probably will be a little bit.
Yeah.
So, not a ton of action going on other than those guys we name. Arkansas will be looking for their new DB coach. We'll keep you guys updated. If we find out anything, if it is the 48, 72 hours, we'll talk to you guys about it on Sunday. If they already make the announcement by then, we may get commitments from these guys visiting. Some guys will commit on the spot or the next day. Some will wait if they're taking other visits. Don't know what other visits these guys have scheduled, but that's one of the things that we'll be taking a look at. But, it is going to start slowing down as far as portal news and football news in the next, few weeks as, football season's officially over. We've entered the off season. Kind of guys are, taking their breaks and things like that. But overall, not the greatest, if you're looking at it going into 2025, hopefully this next season will be more positive, if you will, but it's hard to look at it that way at this point. I mean, there's some optimism with some of the things going on, but I think the fan base as a whole, not super thrilled about Pittman being back another year.
Yeah. And, after the bowl game, there was a little bit of positivity going on. And then the stuff with Carmona and then Desmond James leaving, it just kind of deflated it really quick. So, yeah. And one of the things that they've been worried about is, I've been worried about is the culture behind everything, and that really took a hit with the last week's events. So I don't know. Well, I'm kind of hopeful because I like what they're bringing in, but I'm not counting my chickens before the hatch. So
yeah, I get that. I mean, it's one of those things that makes sense. It's like I guess the all the fanfare or the hoorays from the bowl win wore off pretty quickly. Especially once you have Desmond James enter the portal. Surprise, surprise. I know people were making jokes during the bowl game about how look at him having this good game. Just wait till enter the portal after the game. And sure enough, that happened. And then now you have like you said, the Carmona incident. You had and all that going on. Now you have one of your assistants leaving. Not necessarily saying that was a problem here. I mean, I don't blame guys for taking an opportunity to advance their career. Hate to lose anybody on staff just as far as continuity, if you will. But so you'll have to bring in a guy that may have different ways to do things and things of that nature. So it's one of those things that it'll be interesting to see who we bring in. And what happens in the offseason, see what updates we have. And then once we get through spring practice here, kind of developments there. And then, the spring game will be here before you know it in about April.
Yeah.
With that, we'll get ready to jump over to some Arkansas basketball as Arkansas is getting ready to ramp up conference play. And, that kicks off Saturday as Arkansas will start their, conference play on the road. If you notice from the title of the episode, we're getting ready to tip off conference play. And, I called it the gauntlet begins because that's what this SEC play is going to be. And we're going to start off by previewing this Arkansas-Tennessee matchup. And we're going to welcome Michael from Vol Fanatics to join us and help us preview this matchup with Tennessee in Knoxville on Saturday. So welcome to the show, Michael. How's it going?
It's going good, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on. As y'all can see, I'm still at work. Luckily, got a break left, so I'm glad I'm able to join you guys. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing good, man.
Yeah, same here. Glad to have the struggles of college football over, and Arkansas basketball's here. And like I said, the gauntlet begins, and Arkansas heads on the road to take on you guys, ranked number 1 in the country right now, to open conference play. I don't think it gets tougher than that, but this is going to be interesting from an Arkansas perspective. The whole news, new Coach Cal, things like that, continuous improvement. But from a Tennessee perspective, how do you guys feel about opening conference play and getting started with Arkansas coming to town?
I think that the schedule makers knew exactly what they were doing, starting us off against Arkansas, because you got the whole Jonas Adu transferring from Tennessee the way that he did, and then Coach Cal leaving Kentucky, where it's been Tennessee Kentucky is a bitter rivalry, but especially since Coach Cal and Rick Barnes have been at Kentucky and Tennessee respectively, it's been a huge rivalry. So I think the schedule makers knew exactly what they were doing, putting this game first, trying to get eyes on basketball while the playoffs are still going on in football. But we're excited for the challenge, and it will be a challenge, just like it will be all season long in the SEC.
Yeah, so thinking about that, you mentioned it. That's going to be one of the kind of talking points. From a Tennessee fan perspective, what's y'all's thoughts on Adu returning? Did you expect him to leave after last season? Is it a thing that it was kind of his time to move on, or would you prefer to have him back? Kind of, how do you guys feel about that whole situation and him coming in under Coach Callen wearing Arkansas red?
So Skylar has his opinions on it. My opinion on it, did I want to have him back? Yeah, I wanted to have him back because he's a good player. He's not great, but he's a really good player. He's got a good skill set, got really soft touch around the rim and from the mid range. I mean, he really improved that as of last year. But we weren't expecting him to leave because and this is the reason now I'm not okay with the way that he left Tennessee and the way that a lot of players do it nowadays. We had the end of season meetings with all the players last year, just like all the coaches always do. Brought Adu in. He basically said, yeah, man, everything's good. Looking forward to next year. And within 24 hours, Adu's in the portal. I mean, the way that he left is very unsettling. But I mean, if you want to go and play somewhere else because you feel like it's a better fit, and I don't know what the situation is money wise, but if you want to go somewhere and get a bag too, as they like to say, I mean, good riddance in my opinion. But he's a good player, and we do miss him some this year. I do think that we'll talk matchups later and talk players later. But I like Akpara that we got out of the transfer portal. He's a lot more of a I guess aggressive player than Adu is, but I do think Adu was definitely better around the rim scoring wise, and we do miss that this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you hear a lot of people. I mean, even we talked about it with Sam Pittman talking about the way players leave. And that's the thing, like you said, nowadays with today's portal, like you said, a guy can be like, "Hey, coach, yeah, I'm good. I'm ready for next year, whatever." And then, like you said, who knows? People reaching out through different channels from other schools any way they can to getting somebody's ear, or whether it be their agent or whoever, being like, "Hey, you could stay here. That's good and all, but you got some interest potentially from over here. So, let's explore your options." And maybe that's a little bit of what could have happened there. Did you have a thought there, Austin?
Yeah, man. So I know you started hinting on players, but I really wanted to talk about, because I love bigs, right? When you think of basketball, you think of big guys and tall guys, and like Shaq is my all-time favorite basketball player. So that's just my fascination. What do you think of this matchup between like Okpara, Okpara, right? Is that how you say his name? Okpara and Milicic or Milicic? Milicic, because Milicic, he almost averages a double-double. He's got 10.7 right now, average points, and then 8.2. So I guess more or less, what do you think of the bigs matchup coming on Saturday?
So I think Arkansas will have an advantage scoring wise. I think you guys have got some more finesse bigs that can score around the basket. But I love the physicality of our bigs. And you mentioned Igor Milicic. He's 6'10", and you would think, seeing that right there, hey, this guy's a bruiser down low. But he's actually more of a wing player for us. Obviously, he can guard the big just because of his size, but he's really athletic, and we haven't seen it so far. But when he was at Charlotte in previous years, he is a knockdown 3-point shooter. He's in a bit of a slump right now, but I look to see that come out some during conference play. But the guy that I absolutely love on this team, that is just an absolute bruiser down low, and a young guy as well, Cade Phillips. I believe he's around 6'10", 6'11", something like that, a sophomore from Alabama, and he's really come on as of late. Really stepped up after the injury to another big, JP Estrella, who's out for the season with a ankle injury, something that was nagging him in the off season. He's really stepped up. I don't know what exactly his averages are on the season, but I mean, he can score around the rim. He's also not afraid to get in there with all the guys. So I think it's going to be a fun matchup seeing our bigs against your guys' bigs on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean,
because it kind of sounds similar to what Arkansas has. I mean, we also have a European big who can hit threes. We also have Adu is probably our most physical big, and he's been hurt and sick, and he's off and on. But whenever he's on, it's been pretty nice having that guy who is a legit, rim protector type guy in the post. And then you have Brazil, who is like a 6'10", and he can play wing as well. He can also hit the three, and the dude can lay down the nastiest dunks you've ever seen. So you got me excited for that, because like I said, bigs are the best. But now let's go a little bit smaller. All right. So
before we move to that, I'm not going to talk bad about Adu or anything, but I will say I'm glad he plays physical for you guys, because there was a lot of times last season he didn't do it for us. But I'm really excited to talk about the matchup of the smalls.
I was about to say,
Okay.
before we move on to the smalls there real quick too, it's like, there's a lot of similarities between these two, because another one you didn't mention, Austin, there is he struggled some here of late, but because he's also had some, sick and, nagging injury over the past few games, is for us, Big Z. Our guy that is a big man that, like you said about Milicic, a guy that is more of a stretch big that doesn't necessarily play down the low time, but steps out and hits the three. And then Big Z brings that 7'2" size. He's been up and down this season. Varsaw came out early and actually leads the team in 3-point percentage. Just having great games early on. But yeah, it's going to be a great, I think, battle of the bigs between, for Arkansas, Adu, Trevor Brazil, Aduthiero, and then Big Z, and then for you guys, Milicic, Okpara, Cade Phillips. It should be a fun battle to watch down low. And yeah, this other battle that we're about to talk about here between those guards, that's going to be something else as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. And go ahead, Austin.
Okay, so the one that I'm really excited about, because I don't know why it made me so excited when I first put 2 and 2 together, but Zakai Ziegler and Boogie Flan, right? They're both point guards. They're both great with assists. They both can score from anywhere. They're both from New York. I mean, like, it just feels like you got two guys that have around the same skill set just going at each other. And the thing is, Ziegler is 4 years or 5 years for you guys?
Yeah, this is his 4th year.
Yeah, so he's 4-year vet versus the greenest of the green, right? True freshman. So I'm really excited to see that matchup. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun matchup. I will admit there's a lot of guys I don't really know all that well for you guys' team, but that's why we do these matchups like this right here, these talking points like this, just so we can see behind enemy lines, so to speak. But it's going to be a really fun matchup. The thing I absolutely love about Ziegler is just how much fun he has on the court. Like, you look out there, and there was a picture from the game last Tuesday this past Tuesday on New Year's Eve, where he's on defense. He's just out there smiling, and just the fun that he has and how fast he plays the game, but under control most of the time. I mean, he's leading the SEC this year with 8.2 assists per game, the reigning defensive player of the year. So he does it on all fronts, and his scoring is just a bonus for this team. So I am really excited to see the matchup, and I think whichever point guard takes care of the ball the best and just manages the game best is going to help their team win the game on Saturday.
Well, and talking about that, you're talking about with Ziegler leading the SEC, and then on the flip side that you look at Boogie, he is the freshman leader of assists per game at 6.2, and then assist to turnover ratio of 3.3. So it's like both these guys take care of the ball. Both these guys, there's so much similarity between these two. It's going to be a fun matchup to watch. But then you throw in, like you said, some of these other guys too, and it's like these guys just seem like they're having fun. I mean, what do you think as well with that too there, Austin, about, you have Zakai leading the SEC, but then you have Boogie leading all freshmen. It just seems like it's more fuel for a great matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the steals too, you got Boogie Flan, who's got 22 on the season, versus Sakai, who's got 23. So, I mean, the numbers are almost exactly the same. Yeah. So it'll be, the thing is, I always want to give the edge to the guy who's been there longer. And Zakai, he's been there for 4 years, and he knows Rick Barnes' system. Like, that's what scares me more about this matchup, is that Boogie Flan's kind of the guy on the team, whereas, Zakai Ziegler he's the guy, but he knows his role with being a point guard, whereas we've seen Boogie feel like he has to, or it looks like he feels like he has to do it himself at times, or he thinks that he has to do it himself at times. It's just coming from high school where he did do that, versus a guy who knows how to be the general on the court per se. But so that I would give the edge to Ziegler because of that. But you also have Chaz Lanier, and that's kind of like Arkansas's Adu, right? I haven't seen, how tall is he? Is he a big guard or is he kind of
Chaz
small
Lanier
too?
is he's 6'4", but
Mhm.
he plays a lot bigger than 6'4", and
Yeah.
Tennessee last year had an absolute gem in Dalton Connect, SEC Player
Yeah.
of the Year, just a once in a generation talent to come out of the transfer portal. And everybody up in Knoxville was like, well, how do we make up for that right there? Well, I mean, you just go and get a guy like Chaz Lanier who you say, well, he's not going to be Dalton Connect, but to this point of the season, and you compare it to Dalton Connect last year, he's got better stats than Dalton Connect did. Now, I do think we're going to see Connect stats be a little bit better in SEC play, just because that's whenever Connect really took off, was when we got to SEC play last year. But Chaz Lanier, he started off a little bit rough to start the season because he was a guy that wanted to make sure he shared the ball. He didn't want to seem like he was that guy that needed to take all the shots. And it took Rick Barnes kind of getting into him and saying, look, you are that good. We're not going to get mad about you taking shots, especially if you have the openings. Shoot the ball. And I think
Mhm.
against Norfolk State on Tuesday, he actually shot like 16 threes, and he made about 7 of them, I would think. I don't know the exact numbers on it, but he's just got such a soft stroke, and it's just smooth, all of it. But he was a big pickup out of the transfer portal that, you know, when it came down to the end of it, it was between Tennessee and Kentucky. And I told Skylar on the podcast, I said, look, if he wants to be developed to go to the NBA, he's going to pick Tennessee and he's going to come here. If he wants money and he wants to kind of be that guy, he's going to Kentucky. And he the selling point for him, he said it was like 11:30 at night that he came to campus, and every single member of the Tennessee basketball team met him at the locker room and was like, hey man, welcome in, this is what you're getting into. And they just immediately at 11:30 at night went out there and just had a scrimmage game, just having fun. And it was just a huge pickup, and he's really been a big piece to this Tennessee team.
Yeah, I see that, and I can kind of understand that. And you look at it, we're talking about some similarities. That's kind of been like a Thiero for us. Came over from Kentucky following Coach Cal, but he's been that guy for us this year. When you had some of these other guys, having to develop. You had Jonas Adu not healthy for a little bit, so he was having to sit out. You had some of these freshmen, having the growing pains of getting into college basketball. Other guys kind of having to find their role. Well, Adu Thiero has been that one consistent all season long for Arkansas. He comes in and leads every category except for assists and blocks. Leads Arkansas in points, leads Arkansas in assists or rebounds, steals. He's a matchup nightmare at 6'8", but also he plays like a guard. I mean, it's like they said, with his time at Kentucky, he originally was a guard, came in and then grew. So he grew to 6'8" and he can play that, 3, 4. Even last year, he was called upon to guard Hunter Dickinson when they played Kansas and were missing some guys. So he's one of those guys that can be a tough matchup, or, like I said, a matchup nightmare for, opposing teams, because he's been that one consistent, like Coach Cal said, show me 10 better players in the country than Adu Thiero. So,
yeah. And I do believe that for Tennessee anyway, there's 2 guys that are going to be the absolute X factors in the game. And that is a guy he's got to be in the running for 6th man of the year. That's Jordan Gainey, who has really had a coming out party this year. We had hoped to see it last year, and he just never did quite step up the way that Tennessee fans were hoping. But he stepped up in a big way this year as the 6th man. I mean, you had Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler against Illinois earlier this season. They both fouled out with about 5 minutes to go in the game. and Jordan Gainey stepped up. He had 20-something points, including the game-winning layup where he just went coast to coast. But in my opinion, the biggest X factor on the team and my favorite player on the team, Jemai Mashak. He has been there for 4 years as well, and he really embodies Rick Barnes' defensive prowess. He is, in my opinion, arguably the SEC Defensive Player of the Year already this year. When you've got the reigning SEC Player of the Year on the team with him, but he's so dynamic. He's only, I believe, 6'4" or 6'5", but he can guard 1 through 5. Like last year in the NCAA tournament, there was times where he had to come in and guard Zach Edey of Purdue and did a pretty good job of it. But obviously, the size difference between him and Edey was just, I mean, it was overwhelming at that point. But he's leading the SEC in steals per game at like 2 point something, 2.5, I think. I mean, it's well up there, but something that he really developed over the offseason was his 3-point shot. I mean, Rick Barnes said coming out of the offseason practices, he was arguably the most consistent 3-point shooter. I have seen that he needs to be set to be able to make those. He's not one that can just, pull up off balance three. But if he catches it and he's set, he's money most of the time. But his energy on the court is a lot like Zakai Ziegler's is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. Sorry. So we've got the smalls and we got the bigs. Now, what do you think about this? You said there was a rivalry between Barnes and Calipari. So what do you think? How do you think that translates from him going from Kentucky over to Arkansas?
I think it'll translate pretty well. I mean, and when I say a rivalry, those two guys, they are great friends off the court, but they're competitors when it comes to on the court stuff. And I mean, they're not just going to get at each other's throats like trying to fight or anything. But as far as the matchups and how intense it gets, they're going to be at each other's throats in that way because they want their teams to win that much, and that's going to translate no matter where either of these guys go. So I think that this is going to translate into the game on Saturday. It's going to be a huge game. And I know a lot, we talked about the Adu situation earlier. There's a lot of Tennessee fans that are upset about that whole situation. And the Food City Center in Thompson-Boling Arena will be rocking on Saturday of all those people just ready for this matchup. But yeah, that rivalry that we had at Kentucky with Calipari, it's definitely going to translate to this game on Saturday.
Yeah, for Arkansas fans, the biggest game that we're looking forward to is probably Kentucky, but this is the number 2 because, well, one, it's against one of the best teams in the SEC in the country, and it's the first time we actually get to see Arkansas, go against someone of that caliber in the regular season, at least. And they're just now hitting their stride too. So this is a huge game, but I think it might be a little bit overshadowed by that Kentucky game, even though I think Kentucky, they're good, but I don't know, like compared to everyone else in the SEC, I don't know if they're that good. So for me, this is the most important game of the year, and it just happens to be the first game. So that's it's kind of crazy how it just, like you said, I think they knew what they were doing, even though I don't think anybody else saw this matchup being as big as it is. But yeah, Tennessee is that's one of the hardest places to play in the SEC. What do you have, like 20,000 people in that stadium?
It's somewhere around there. I kind of think it's closer to 25. I don't know the exact number, but
it's bigger than Bud Walton. I know that.
Yeah, but you really had a good transition there. Talking about Kentucky, you don't know exactly how good they are. Well, I can argue we don't know how good anybody really is in the SEC, except for, I will say, Auburn. Auburn has had a very tough non-conference slate, and they only came out of it with one loss. I think Auburn is well tested, and I do think there's some other teams in the SEC that are well tested as well. But you look at the SEC as a whole right now, and the I guess quote unquote worst team coming out of non-conference play is South Carolina, sitting at 9-3 on the
Yeah.
season. Um, I mean, it's unreal what the SEC has done this year. I mean, they only had 2 losses, went 14-2 in the SEC ACC Challenge. That's just unreal what they have done so far this year. But when we get into conference play, we're going to find out what some of these teams are made of and just how good they really are. And I think there are going to be some teams up top, like maybe a Kentucky, maybe a Tennessee, maybe a Florida, maybe an Oklahoma who, has started off unbelievable, being undefeated on the season so far that nobody saw coming. We're going to find out what a lot of these teams are made of very early on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I think whatever that dominance, I think they took it from football because apparently they weren't very good this year. I don't know if you saw, but Georgia just got beat by Notre Dame. So now Texas of all teams is leading the SEC into the Final Four of the playoffs. So as an Arkansas fan, I hate that, but at the same time, you're kind of like, I really don't want Notre Dame or Ohio State to win. So I guess I'm a Penn State fan from here until the end of the college football season.
Yeah, and then, I mean, kind of just to echo what Austin was saying too, I feel like this game, looking at it, is a good measuring stick game, if you will, because Arkansas's had some games like we're hitting our stride. We finally, like Coach Cal keeps emphasizing it, we're finally getting everybody healthy to where we have the rotation we expected coming into the season. And so this will be a good game to, see where we stack up against one of the better teams in the conference. Because I mean, like you said, up and down, that's why I called this episode, if you will, talking about let the gauntlet begin, because it's gotten to that level of, at least this season anyway, for SEC basketball, is almost on the same level as SEC football and SEC baseball. I mean, it's just a battle week in, week out through conference play. And that's what you're going to see this year. Like you said, with South Carolina being quote unquote the worst SEC team, and they are, 9-3 in non-conference play. So it's going to be fun to see where Arkansas stacks up against a team that, maybe has a little bit of continuity, has been together for a little bit, where, Coach Cal put this Arkansas team together, put them together in essentially 6 months after he got hired. So these guys are still learning to play with to each other, learning each other's tendencies and things like that. So they're continually getting better. But I think this is going to be a good game to see kind of where we stack up, entering conference play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a question for you guys, just looking big picture going into the SEC. Skylar brought it up on our podcast Sunday. So, obviously Tennessee right now sitting #1 in the nation, still undefeated, one of 4 teams in the country that are undefeated. We know that Tennessee will not go undefeated throughout the season. It's just impossible to do this day and age and with how good the SEC is. So, what would you guys consider a successful year in the SEC? Like, where do you think Arkansas will finish up? And I'll go ahead and say what both of us feel for Tennessee. We think that as long as Tennessee is in the top 5, I think that's realistic expectations based on where Tennessee came from last year, where they are trending towards this year. I'm not going to sit here and say, Tennessee's got to win the SEC, because that's hard to do. I think that as long as you're sitting top 5 in the SEC, then I think that is a successful year. I mean, that puts you in the NCAA tournament, puts you in a great spot to make a run in the SEC tournament. What are your guys' thoughts on a successful year in the SEC?
Yeah, I would say top 5 is probably the same with Arkansas. I mean, obviously we have a completely new team. Everyone is different, even the head coach, except for Trevor Brazile, only guy in the locker room, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. So yeah, top 5 would be it. But the thing is, there's also an expectation too, because one of the incredible amount of NIL money we put into the program, and then obviously the the everything that comes with having John Calipari here, that it's got some huge expectations on it. So at least top 5. I think even if we drop into top 6 or lower, I think most fans would be very disappointed with that, to be honest with you. And whether that's justified or not, I don't know. But that's just Hog fans are gonna be Hog fans, especially with who they brought in and how much money they've put into.
Yeah, and just echoing what Austin says there, I agree. It's like if you look at all the factors in what comes with bringing in John Calipari, what comes with, the amount of what comes in with NIL that Arkansas put into the program, what expectations, and it's interesting. But I kind of agree. Top 5 there, and I think you're going to see a high number of teams that get into the tournament that are going to, especially from the SEC, that are going to have losing conference records. You may have teams that go, 7-12, or what, in a losing situation just because of how tough the conference is. And yeah, I kind of agree, around that top 5 is probably expectations and what I think Arkansas should finish, the nature of Hall of Fame head coach John Calipari, the money in the roster, these guys continuing to get better. I think that is reasonable expectations. And it hurts me, Austin, that you're forgetting about everybody's favorite walk-on Lawson Blake that's still here as well.
Yeah, I forgot.
But so I think we're all on the same page there, kind of views for both Arkansas and Tennessee that, we see and kind of expect top 5 as reasonable expectations for what both these programs and their fans expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's reasonable, and I think that the way that these rosters are, I think that should be expected. And I think anything worse than top 5, or I'll even go to top 6, I think that's a disappointing year for either one of these teams.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, since you gotta get out of here, at the end of the day, in this game, this matchup, we know you're probably going with Tennessee to win this matchup, but coming into it, do you think it has the feel of one of those games? Do you think what's your expectations for a final? Do you think it's going to be a close game, a couple possession, 10-point game? What's your kind of thoughts, as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I don't see a blowout either direction in this game. I think it's a close game. It always is when a Rick Barnes coach team and a John Calipari coach team get together. It's going to be a close game. Obviously, I am going to pick a Tennessee win, but I think it goes more towards the home court advantage type thing. I think that both of these teams are still finding their stride. I think that there's still something missing with Tennessee this year, but you know what? That's fine. It's still early. I don't want us to be hitting on all cylinders right now. I want us to be hitting on all cylinders when we get to March. So I do think this is going to be a very good game, a very close game that I think Tennessee pulls out. Basically, like I said, due to home court advantage. I believe, Austin, you're the one that mentioned it earlier. It's very tough to play in Thompson-Boling Arena, but it's tough to play anywhere on the road, no matter if it's football, if it's basketball, baseball. Home court, home field advantage is a real thing, especially in the SEC. And that's why I do give the advantage to Tennessee in this game. I think if it was played in Arkansas, I would give the advantage to Arkansas. It means that much, the home court advantage does, especially in the SEC.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. Michael from Vol Fanatics was able to join us tonight and talk about the matchup for open SEC Conference opener Saturday as Arkansas heads to Knoxville to take on number 1 Tennessee. We thank you for joining the show. Can't wait to have you back and then talk more when baseball season gets here. So,
yeah, we actually get to play you guys in the regular season this year, so it's fun to talk about baseball. Both of these programs are very good in baseball as well. It seems like we're developing a little bit of a rivalry in all 3 of the major sports now, so it's always fun to do all that.
Yeah, I agree. But we thank you for taking the time out, spending your break talking with us about this upcoming matchup, and can't wait to see the game on Saturday.
Yeah, appreciate y'all having me, and good luck on Saturday, guys.
Thank you. That was Michael from Vol Fanatics. You can go check them out for any Tennessee content and their opinions on the upcoming matchup that they did on their show. But at the end of the day, I mean, Austin, what do you kind of see in this matchup, and what would you call a good day for Arkansas? I mean, obviously getting the win would be great, but what is something you want to see out of this team, even if we lose, that would make you feel good about where this team's at and going through rest of conference play?
So if you'd have asked me before they play in Michigan, I would have said probably Tennessee by 10. That would probably been my guess around there. And I probably would have felt okay with it because I really am high on Tennessee. I think they're a very, very good program, very good team. And I think Zakai Sigler is probably one of the best point guards, if not the best point guard in the country. That being said, I think Arkansas is really finding their stride. And they've done a lot without like John L. Davis. And they've done a lot without Big Z. And that's where I really am finding some confidence going into the SEC is with one, the new bigs that we have, Adu in Brazil coming back from injury and really finding their stride. And then DJ Wagner, we hadn't really talked about him at all. We didn't talk about him at all with Michael. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't talk about DJ Wagner at all. And it's seeing him start to build up. And right now he's third on the team in points per game. So I don't know, man. I feel like it has to be pretty close. I'd probably put it up to 7. Like anything more than 7 points is going to be a bit of a disappointment to me, unless it's, end of the game, fouling and they just that type of
right
differential.
They pull away that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, with 2 minutes left, if they're within 7, then I'm probably pretty happy. Although I think Arkansas could I think they have a very good chance to be leading, by 1 or 2, by a score. I don't see Arkansas winning by, more than 2 baskets. I really don't. But we'll see. Defense travels. Arkansas's defense hasn't been. They're good. They just haven't been as I don't want to say consistent as efficient lately in the last couple of games. So especially against Oakland, they had one guy who was good. They had one guy that was in the post and he was very physical, and that gave Arkansas some problems. So if what he's saying is correct about Akpa, or I forgot his name already.
Akpa, yeah.
Yeah. If he is as physical as they say, I'm a little bit worried with that. So we'll see. But Arkansas's got some great guards. I think overall Arkansas has better guards than Tennessee does. But I think that the guards that they do have that are good are probably better than our top 2 guards put together.
Yeah.
And I'm not counting. I'm talking about like DJ Wagner and Boogie Flan versus Lanier and
Zakai Sigler.
Yeah. So if you put those up together, I'd say that Tennessee has the better of the 2. But they also don't have a Thero. They don't have a Thero. I don't think they have a guy that's like that. One that's going to be able to go to the rim and draw fouls as well as, make buckets. So,
yeah. And I think it's one of those things where you look at it too, like you said, I expect this to be not much more than a 2-possession game when it comes down to it. I think, it might be overlooked with, them being number 1 in the country. But like you said, if you look at this and break this down by matchups, these are 2 teams that are very evenly matched up across the board. When you look at it, like you might have some advantages here or there. You're talking about Thero. He's a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams just because he can handle the ball like a guard, but he has that ability just to drive right at you to the rim with force. You've got Brazil that plays the 4 or 5, can even guard, some guards. Adu's getting healthier, and he's looking more like that all SEC player that we expected him to be. Maybe we'll see better minutes out of Big Z. You're seeing, growth from Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, in these past few games where they've really, it seems like, taken strides forward. And, you're going to need those guys down the stretch. And I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game, great learning opportunity for this team. I watched an interview today that they did with one of the assistant coaches. I'm blanking on the name that they former Louisville coach.
Shoot. Now that you said it.
Kenny Payne.
Kenny Payne,
The
yeah.
interview that they did with Kenny Payne, and talking about how, this is probably, other than you think about New York, going to be one of the toughest environments that Arkansas has played in all season. And it's going to be loud. It's going to be a big time matchup. And so, he emphasized what's going to be, it is not letting this environment get to the players' heads. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that you're going to see, and not kind of letting the environment get to them too much.
Yeah, because especially having Boogie Flan, who's a guard, you can have the bright lights of, and that's also the bright lights at Madison Square Garden affected a little bit, especially in the first half, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not going to be anything compared to the crowd noise and the atmosphere that you can see in Tennessee, because you've got the entire crowd as Tennessee Vol fans, and the only fan base out there in the SEC that I feel like is as crazy as Arkansas fans are is probably Tennessee, especially when it comes to baseball. But, basketball, football, maybe not as much. But still, they're going to be, loud. They're going to be saying stuff to you while you're driving down the court. It's not going to be a friendly place to play at all. And I am worried about having a freshman point guard and then some other key guys who are freshmen doing that.
I think that's going to be where you might have to rely on your guys like DJ Wagner that's been there. If Nelly Davis plays, a guy that, make it come in there and be a little bit more, have a little bit more composure in these big time games. When think about, DJ Wagner played for Cal at Kentucky in some big games last year, and then think about Nelly Davis, making it those deep runs in the NCAA tournament, playing in some big crowds and things. So, I think you might have to rely on some of your veteran guys, but at the end of the day, I think it should be a fun, exciting game that gets tipped off at noon on Saturday. Not the early game, a good middle of the day time slot to sit back and watch some Arkansas basketball as they get ready to open up conference play. And, some interesting things to, talking about, some developments coming up where, wrapping up at the end of the day, should be a fun matchup versus Tennessee on Saturday. Flipping back over to football really quick before we get out of here. Some interesting names that have been thrown around for, we were talking about Darren Wilson, leaving the program, headed to take that DC job at Georgia State. One name that has been floated out there, just on social media and some other things that we're seeing. The name Rohan Gaines has been thrown out there for potentially coming in and replacing him. And if you remember, he was one great defensive back for Arkansas.
Yeah. I just remember hearing, I don't remember that announcer's name, but it was prime time against Ole Miss. He took that 105-yard interception back to the house. Rohan Gaines. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I think that'll get the fans fired up a little bit. Having a former Hog come back and coach, that's cool. Is he coaching somewhere now? I haven't even
Yeah, I was about to say this is new enough that we let's see.
Coaching. Is that Texas A&M?
Yeah, I think so. Let's
Wow,
see.
look at that. He was a grad assistant there, but I don't know.
I was about to say the best way to potentially, give somebody their best start, having some experience in the SEC at Texas A&M and then jumping over to their former school could be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I'll be. That's exciting for me, at least. So yeah, that would be cool. I'm not sure how well, I'm not like on a strictly like coaching. You really don't know because he hasn't really coached, but the experience of having a former Hog come back, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he'd know what it would mean, what it means to play for the state and things like that, and for the program,
Right.
and so that would be pretty cool. So we'll keep you guys up to date on that. If they're wanting to make this hire pretty quick, which I'm sure they are, wanting to get somebody in, and we have news by Sunday, we'll let you know on the recap. And then, of course, we'll talk about the game against Tennessee. Another thing, I want to thank everybody. We hit our 500 subscriber mark on YouTube. Thank you for everybody that watches, subscribes to the show. We hit it right before midnight on New Year's Eve. I appreciate it. That's big for us here as we get there and continue to grow. And just thank you to everybody that tunes in. Arkansas versus Tennessee Saturday at noon. Get ready to tune in. Should be a fun conference opener for this Arkansas basketball team under Coach Cal in his first season at Arkansas. Any other news that comes out, follow our pages, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you get that news at. We'll keep you updated on that. And until Sunday, pending any crazy updates, we'll see you on Sunday for our recap show. Until then, have a great rest of the week. Enjoy your Friday, and we'll see you right back here on Sunday.